Hey there, happy Sunday. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Karishma Connect. In this episode, I'm speaking to Mona Jalota, who's the founder and managing director of Krypton Global Investments. And she's had a rather unique journey, which she shares with me in this podcast. She also talks to me about property, real estate, where should the youth invest, what should people keep in mind if you're a budding entrepreneur looking to enter the field, what you should know about real estate, and the different facets that it presents in terms of a career, especially for women. She also talks to me about what your relationship with money should be, a rather interesting answer right there. So go check it out. And until the next one, stay tuned. This is Karishma. I'll be back yet again. Until then, tada. Hey there, happy Sunday. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Karishma Connect. In this episode, I'm speaking to Mona Jalota, who's the founder and managing director of Krypton Global Investments. And she's had a rather unique journey, which she shares with me in this podcast. She also talks to me about property, real estate, where should the youth invest, what should people keep in mind if you're a budding entrepreneur looking to enter the field, what you should know about real estate, and the different facets that it presents in terms of a career, especially for women. She also talks to me about what your relationship.
Thank you so much, Mona, for joining me on this episode of Karishma Connect. It's a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad we are finally doing this. Thank you again for your time today.
Not at all. I'm looking forward to this chat with you, Karishma. It's been a while. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Likewise. Now, the first question I start with, Mona, on the show is that tell me about that journey so far, because you know it best. You've been through it. So I'm not going to spell it out for you because I won't be able to do justice. So please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to intermix the personal and professional journey because always where you are is a mix of who you are as a person, and professional is just one aspect of it. And let me warn everyone who's watching that mine is no less than a fabulous Bollywood drama movie.
Wow.
But in a nutshell, I was born and brought up in a regular conservative Punjabi family in Mumbai. Got married at 18, had both my kids by 23. Finally, in 2007, realized that I needed to get financially independent. By then, remember, I had no education because I hadn't finished married straight out of 12th. So I said, okay, what do I do? Like, I'm good, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I have good communication skills. What is it that I can really do? And then, the thought came to me about real estate because I always had a knack for it. Like my father, when he was alive, would always ask me that, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And in 1993, when I lost my father, I had gone to London to settle off our assets and sell and buy. And I realized that I had a knack for it. So in 2008, I said, okay, let me, try real estate because that was honestly the only profession where I didn't need an education. Back in India, I didn't need a license. I didn't need infrastructure. I could just do it because I had connections and because I was knowledgeable about it. And so the journey started. Just when I had made up this mind, believe it or not, I came to Dubai for a friend's wedding where I met my first boss, Mr. Seamus Nugent. And I mean, the rest they say is history. I started with Dandara. I started selling UK properties in India. With Dandara, I was there for 2 years. We did some fabulous work, sold around 60 odd apartments. I got a couple of awards for being the best business development person back then. So it started with a bang. From there, I went on to be director residential for Knight Frank. And from then, I went on to be director residential for Colliers. And then in 2017, I thought that, okay, why don't I do? So for me, every time like a personal incident is linked with some professional career change or growth aspect, because I feel, that is one thing that I can control. The incidents that happen in life, you can't control. But professionally, you have some kind of control in what direction you need to take. In 2017, in December, I lost my mom. And then I realized that I didn't want to do a job anymore because I wasn't really necessarily having any responsibilities then to think about, the monthly paycheck and all. And although I loved Colliers as a company, they were super good to me. My colleagues, they were really nice. So in Knight Frank, I mean, we all are still in touch. But in 2017, I said, why not start my own thing, be an entrepreneur? That bug was there. And by then, I had finished my graduation. I had also done my MBA from NCR in 2015.
Wow. So you pursued your education afterwards.
Yeah, I did. I realized that I had to fulfill that need of being educated, so I did focus on that. And my professor Padmanabhan from NCR, I always blame him for giving me the entrepreneurial bug because he changed my mindset. He changed the way I thought, and that course just changed a lot for me. And then, I said, okay, let me start my own venture, and that's how Krypton was born. Krypton, I mean, I always knew when I was even 5 years old that if I ever had a company, it would be called Krypton because of my complete whole obsession with Superman. So I knew that I wanted to be the planet that gave everyone power. So I started with that. And yeah, I mean, it's been phenomenal, Karishma. What do I say? I mean, I'm so lucky. I'm blessed. God is kind. The journey has just been fantastic so far. I have done exactly what I wish to do professionally, personally. I have just, grown step by step. Every challenge has turned around into an opportunity for me. And the latest was, of course, in 2022 when I decided to move lock, stock, and barrel to Dubai and reimagine the brand here and make this the center of the brand rather than in India. Of course, there were many reasons why that decision happened, but I'm really happy I'm here in Dubai. We started in 2023. Rather, we started officially in 2024 in Jan. So we're a very young company. But the year and a half went in really setting up a strong foundation, having good collaborators, good partners, searching for the right team. We did things well. So now here we are in 2020. Looking forward to what this next phase of the journey looks like going forward from here.
That's a wonderful, wonderful story. And my first question is actually going to take you back a couple of seconds, which is why I asked you that you actually went back to pursue your education at a time when not many people think about it. There's a lot of stereotype around that sometimes in the society that you know I know people even around me who have kind of lived or are in their middle age sort of span of life, and they end up doubting whether they should be making that decision. Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me about how you just
Yeah.
went with it?
I mean, in retrospect, of course, you look at the happy things and you look at the positive things that came out of every decision you've taken. But let me tell you, it was not easy, Karishma. I mean, there was age bias, there was severe underconfidence, there was just wondering, how will I ever finish it? How will I ever do it? And, in a class of very accomplished people. So the graduation part was still okay because, we were in India and online and, remote degree, that was still okay. I think the that was more a need because I realized that professionally, I mean, this is so funny that I realized in India, no matter how talented, how brilliant you are, if you don't have a professional degree, your chances in the corporate world get severely diminished.
That's also stereotype, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember in 2007 making the statement that someday somebody's going to be wise enough and say that look at the talent, look at the ability, don't look at a degree. Because honestly, if you ask me today, there's very, very less of what I have learned during my school and college and graduation that gives me any kind of value today. I may come across as somebody well read, but that's because of my choices, not because of the education system as such. But that's now another whole different conversation. But yeah, it was tough. Um, I remember when I enrolled into NCR, it was an expensive course, and that was a lot of investment I was making on myself. And there were a lot of questions, there were a lot of comments, there was a lot of it was tough. And my class was with a lot of accomplished people. Some of them were like software engineers, some of them were like 10 years with a big multinational brand, and here I was, this chit of a person, not having much value to her resume but still doing the course. But yeah, I discovered my competitive spirit. I think I came second in the class.
Wow.
So, so I really discovered that yes, I can be competitive. Like, when you're growing up in, I'm talking, of course, many years ago, but women were always thought to be diminished. Like, you couldn't laugh too loud, you couldn't sneeze too loud. And God forbid, if you're ambitious and you're aggressive and you're career driven, then you're a complete anti role model. Like, people were told not to be like me because I was, pretty focused on my career and, what I wanted to do. So, in retrospect, it all worked out. But at that point, when I was going through the whole thing, yes, it was very difficult. It was a lot of self doubt. It was just a dogged determination to do something with my life that pushed me through. Also, there were a few points to prove. When you're younger, you don't have the maturity to understand that you don't do it for anyone else, you do it for yourself. But at that point, I think there were a lot of points I needed to prove. So, even that fueled the journey to say, okay, give it your all, see where it goes. And I think I discovered that inherently in my nature, I'm not afraid of taking risks. If something appeals to me, I will do it. If it makes, if it's going to further me in some way, I will accept that change. So, yeah, it was a lot of self discovery, and I changed completely as a person via this education. Not that what I learned changed me, but the whole journey of setting out to learn, that is what changed me.
Tell me, what about the world of investing excites you? What drew you towards it?
um, I realized that the women had a very salient involvement in this entire process. Like, they were always like, it was very secondary, the involvement. Many instances, it was always the owner who was going to pay money for the house would always say, hey, I'm just going to pay the money, ask my wife, because she wants a home and she should be happy, and happy wife, happy life. I've heard a lot of that in my career. And
Absolutely.
sometimes I felt that the men were always like, okay, it's my decision. I'm looking at it as an investment. And then it's right. I started studying more about this because something about the word investment in a high end home in Mumbai didn't make sense to me. I said, okay, you're buying a home in Malabar Hill, which is already 1 lakh 25 a square foot. Where
Mm,
is it going to go from here? Like, what kind of investment are you talking about?
mm,
And of course, I never voiced it, but these thoughts kept coming in my head. And I kept thinking that, when we buy a home to live in, it's
mm.
just a mental solace that we give ourselves that, oh, मैंने तो 10,000 में लिया था, like I bought it for 10,000 a square foot, now it's become 1 lakh a square foot.
Yeah,
This is all just a solace because we're never going to, God forbid, the way the Asian mentality is, we never sell the home we live in,
yeah.
considering that it's an investment. I've maxed out the money, so now let me exit and go somewhere else.
Mm,
Now that part started appealing to me. I started thinking that, people are talking about stocks and equities all the time. There are portfolio managers who are doing stocks and equities. There are people who are telling you buy this stock, sell this stock, don't do this, do this. I said, how come real estate is so neglected when it is the maximum passion of the rich and the wealthy across the globe?
yeah.
How about starting with like a global real estate portfolio advisory services? And that was the germination of the investment plus real estate seed that came in my mind. And in Krypton, that's exactly what we started doing. We started considering real estate not only as a trophy asset that you can live in and create a home in and have memories in, but also a very, very viable investment option. Usually there are these myths surrounding tangible assets to say that, oh, they are illiquid, real estate is illiquid. When you want to buy, it's not easy to sell, it's not. So we said, okay, let's reimagine. How about we gave you something that was easy to get in, easy to get out, made you money, and we only made money if you made money. So that was the path breaking concept that happened. And yeah, investments is very appealing. I think, of course, a lot of financial literacy is required for women. I see myself, a lot of my colleagues, we earn a lot of money and we are always struggling to understand what is the right product to invest in, or, which bond, which stock, which wealth manager, what to do, what not to do. So I think, yeah, the world of investments has a lot of appeal for me. At some point in life, I am going to start a investment educational aspect for women or financial literacy for women and help them become rock stars at managing their own money. So that is, of course, some future ambition of mine. And when that happens, we'll do this podcast again.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me about the model.
Okay, so Krypton basically is a global real estate investments advisory services. The model is very simple. We always represent the client. We are a product agnostic company. We work with family business offices, high net worth individuals, ultra high net worth individuals. We work with wealth management, wealth managers. We work with a lot of collaborators to kind of come in and understand what is the need of the client for his real estate investments. So we understand whether it's an investment or it's a end use home. We understand what are his budgets, what kind of facilities we can offer him based on those budgets. We basically handle end to end everything for the customer, right from identification of his need to suggesting the right investment or end use option to him, organizing his mortgage, making sure that the structure he's buying in is very compliant with the jurisdiction in which he or she is purchasing, making sure the tax efficiency is in place, making sure that the client is protected as much as he can be, with varying market dynamics. So it's a very bespoke, customized service. Of course, we have an entire team that does the regular buy, sell of off-plan and resale properties in Mumbai, in Dubai, and in London. But the crux of the company and the reason why we are, even in our own small way, well known in the investment space is because of our bespoke advisory services, followed up with excellent execution. So usually we also noticed a gap that there are many advisory services, but then who executes? Who makes sure that the vision that you have seen together with your planner comes into fruition?
Yeah.
So we combine the execution, come the advisory to give a 360-degree service to the customer. That in nutshell is the model. Now that also includes a lot of ancillary things. So if somebody is purchasing property overseas, are they going to get benefit of a citizenship or a permanent residency? What about the golden visa? What about a PR? So, we take into account all of these things when we are advising an investment to a client.
Also, what you're doing is very much a business of relationships, right? You mentioned
Yes.
collaborations, you mentioned be it the client, be it your own internal teams. What have you understood about dealing with so many relationships in the past couple of years?
Wow, that's a big one. So just at the onset, just to keep you posted that I'm already in my second year of counseling, in the sense I'm training to be a trained counselor.
Oh,
Because I realized that marketing, sales, and interrelations, whether it is people, whether it is your team members, whether it is customers, it's all about psychology. It's all about understanding the mindset. It's all about knowing yourself first well enough to understand what your reactions are, and then to show the same empathy and grace to whoever you're dealing with, in front of you. So in this, 15 years of my journey of working and, handling teams, leading teams, employing teams, and dealing with customers of so many different backgrounds, I can say that I have seen a lot. I have been part of family dynamics. I've been part of interpersonal relations. I've been part of somebody talking something about somebody. I've handled very, very tough customers. I was called in to consult a local Emirati family when their patriarch died, and the division of assets had to happen. And I saw the way different cultures worked. And it's all about, coming from a space of patience, of understanding, of realizing that when you're meeting people in a certain situation or a circumstance, they are already triggered, they're already going through their processes. How can you make life easy for them rather than, cause any more confusion, or, try to do something which is beneficial for you, but not going to solve their problem. So it's a lot of reflection. It's a lot of, stoicness that you need in kind of dealing with all of this. And it's all about relationships, Karishma. At the end of the day, it is all about relationships. It's all about how you can connect with a person. I think hierarchies disappear. I think service provider and service taker, that distinction disappears. A lot of these things melt away if you come from a good, solid space of understanding that you're trying to build a relationship, and that really helps professionally. And that's a tip I follow for life. Like, make a connection. Business is bound to follow.
Very true. Very true. Keeps going. Coming to real estate, which is currently on its highest of highs in the region. I write about it, so I know that it's growing at the speed of light. There's so much happening. What makes it exciting for you, and why is it a good time for more women to kind of consider this career, which was actually traditionally very male dominated for quite some time?
So I'm going to answer it in two parts. So number one is what makes it exciting for me. I just love real estate. It's my passion. It's been 15 years. Every day I wake up so happy to go to work. I feel so happy that I'm doing what I'm doing. And, it gives me a lot of satisfaction and a lot of gratitude because, of course, thanks to this profession, I've got everything that I am today is thanks to this profession. So my passion for the profession has not died. I think the day I feel, oh shucks, do I really need to go and work today, is the day I'll give up real estate as a profession. But so far I don't see that anywhere close to happening. Like, I wake up 100% enthusiasm every single day that, wow, what a great space I'm in. So for me, personally, that's what attracts me to real estate. I love being in real estate. It's an amazing, amazing opportunity. It's an amazing industry. I mean, I cannot tell you what a lonely journey this has been. I have been trying to get more women involved in the real estate workforce. And, in India, I always led an all women's team. I had only one boy in marketing in my team who would always tell me, ma'am, get some diversity, please get some more men. I think I've seen the normal prejudices and the normal, kind of hitches that girls face when they want to take up real estate as a profession. Remember, it's okay to be in a corporate, right? When you're in a Knight Frank, you're in a Colliers, when you're one of the corporate companies, you have set roles, you have set timings, etc. But real estate is not only about that. That could be any corporate job. Somebody who's doing that in a corporate real estate company will tomorrow do it in an FMCG company, will do it in a telecommunications company. That's not real estate I'm talking about. But real estate where you actually understand market dynamics, you understand what appeals to customers, you are passionate about studying real estate all across the world. What are the trends happening? Why are people buying here? How do you understand rental versus buying? Those kind of distinctions and that kind of passion I see very less in women realtors. I think there are a lot of misgivings that come in culturally as well. Like in India, I remember in 2007 when I started, there were such few women realtors there. I think I probably had the distinction of being one of the first to, take it up so seriously, start my, career at an high and things like that. So I felt that even at that time, parents were worried to let their daughters get into real. Arey, usko broker nahi banana hai. We don't want to make her a broker. How can she go for site visits? What is the safety? What's the security? What happens when you're sending your girls to closed homes? And there were a lot of mishaps and misgivings. And, the profession was not a very, very regulated profession. It was always run by those typical brokers, pan chewing, and with zero knowledge about industry, but yeah, connections and the how do I say, the bravery to go ahead and just own the deal. So a lot of change has happened, of course, from then to now. And I would like to believe very, very deeply from my heart that maybe I was responsible for the 0.1% of the change that happened, because I cannot tell you how much I have devoted my time in educating women that this is the only profession that you can do with no investment. You can do it with good sensibility. You have managed your home for so many years. You've built up a community. You've built up your network. You have your friends. Would your friends rather trust you in your judgment when it came to their homes, or would they trust a random person? And of course, we put in checks and balances of, safety, the checker maker model, where never go alone for a site visit. Always take a companion with you so you're safe. And, culturally, every country that I operated in, I had to adapt to that culture. So India was all about giving them a safe, secure environment, making sure that, they were protected. In India, I think the most value one could offer to a female realtor was protection.
Yes.
Fast forward London, America.
Mm.
I think in America and London, the maximum number of realtors there are women. And the dynamic completely changes in those countries. Like they have understood long back that real estate is one profession that they can do on their own time. They don't need to have a 9 to 5 job per se. They can do it when they have time, look after their children, make some extra income, do your home, do your community work and all of that, and still make money. So there, the dynamics totally changed. So there I felt very empowered. Like when I work in US, when I work in UK, I'm surrounded by strong women realtors having excellent networks, superbly connected, and really owning the part that of course I'm a broker and I'm a really good one. Then fast forward to Dubai 2023. This was also culturally very, very different. Like the kind of team I wanted to hire. Um, Number one, when I started interviewing people here, 99% of the candidates who applied were male. The few women who applied here were so preconceived in their notion on what a realtor should be like. So I actually remember telling one of them, next time please come back wearing more clothes. This is not that kind of company. We want to have people who are, you have to sell your skill, your knowledge, not your looks. Dubai is a very, very, I feel the real estate space in Dubai is a very visual space. So it's been a little bit of a challenge to kind of follow this culture, because of course, if you are in Dubai and it is a visual culture, then sometimes you also have to adapt your company policies to make sure that you're fitting in with the culture and you're respecting the space that you're working in. But yes, it is also very important for me to be authentic in the space that I'm working with. So as of now, I have much less women in Dubai who would like to work with me. But hopefully in the coming years, the ratio will change. Once again, if I go back to the ethics and stick my ground and, run a company which is, of course, has a fair balance of visual appeal and also of solid knowledge, business acumen, good strategy, good decision-making abilities, I'm sure, that will always trump just a beautiful girl showing a beautiful home.
Yeah.
So this is some kind of differences that I see in different countries, and yeah, so this is how it's been, and I hope that more and more women realize this and come and join the industry.
Now, the other thing is, I've also seen a lot of young ones enter the industry, invest in real estate. These are the two facets, of course, that immediately meets the eye, right? You have the people who are considering this as a career now, and then you have people who are actually considering buying a home, especially in Dubai, where people used to not consider buying a home for quite some time, but today they are. The numbers are saying it. Can you share some tips with me for both sides of the journey? So, if we begin with those youngsters who are kind of looking to enter the industry, what should they know before they make that decision?
I think especially for this industry, I think knowledge is key. Knowledge is key. And having a long-term perspective, like especially in Dubai, I've seen that the hottest new thing is real estate. So
Yeah.
people who are bankers are leaving their jobs and jumping into real estate. People who are in various sectors are saying, heck, leave that. There's so much money in real estate. I'm going to jump here. I think it's a mindset that one needs to adapt. I mean, the younger generation, I feel, has so much more sensibilities than the people of our generation, because money is not motivating factor for them. From whatever I've observed, they go for passion, they go for experiences, for excellence. And I think that is the kind of mindset that will really take anybody joining a new industry far. Like, don't leave what is your core competency to come and do something just because you feel there's more money there. Because then it's going to be a very, very short term approach. You'll make money for a couple of, you'll be lucky, you'll make money, God bless. But then, very soon you'll realize you don't have the talent, and your clients will realize that neither do you have the talent, neither do you have the knowledge to do the long haul with them. So it's easy come and easy go. I think one tip that I would give for people who want to join this industry is give it a 3 to 5 year horizon and understand the pros and cons of this industry. The pros are there's lots and lots of money to be made here. The cons are that you have to wait and you have to work diligently and hard before you score your first hit. you know So have a 6 month of corpus in your bank account before you start becoming a realtor in Dubai. Make sure that all your bills, your rent, everything is well provided for at least 6 months. And then you start this journey, because that will allow you to function and work without pressure and work on your own terms, right?
Yeah.
And suppose in 6 months, God forbid, if you haven't closed a deal, then clearly this is not meant for you, you know. Then you switch gears and then you take up a job which will then provide you with another 6 months of corpus before you figure out what you wish to do next, you know. So don't come into it, just jump into it with nothing in hand. How many times have we seen professions getting totally ruined by people who were too much in their comfort zone, very happy with a monthly paycheck and not having any ambition or any goal at all? So in Dubai, real estate is a super ambitious, super competitive space. So make sure you're geared up to work hard. Don't believe everything that you see on Instagram. It's not all roses and, you know, fancy lifestyle. You get that, but you have to seriously be willing to put in the hard work. So that would be my tip for youngsters who are wanting to join the industry. Now, for the first time home buyers, uh, do a fair evaluation, you know, see your finances, always get pre-approved for a mortgage, which will just help you make a healthier financial decision. Understand I feel financial understanding is so important. You know, often we hear, oh, I'm paying so much for rent, I'm just going to buy it. Why would I buy it when I can live on rent? I mean, these are all monikers and these are all experiences and perspectives of people who are not living the same life as what you are living. You got to understand your decision basis of your finances, your perspectives, your life. How are you going to commit to a few things? And then you make that decision. And you know, there are so many tools available today online. You know, in this generation has so much access to data. So take smarter decisions when you're buying your first home. Don't go in. I always say, when you're building a portfolio, never go in for your dream home instantly. Always build up your assets in a way that, you know, you buy, sell, and then you take your dream home from your profitability, not from your capital. So that's my perspective. You may have a different perspective, but in a nutshell, the key decision making is understanding of your finances and how your life is panning out, and not what you hear from others. If the youngsters want to follow the habits of the rich people, it's to be authentic, to do things for yourself, not to seek validation or respect from people outside, no matter what that possession may be. It may be a home, it may be your t-shirt, it may be your jacket, it may be your bag, whatever it is. You're doing it for yourself and you're empowered whether you have that thing or you don't have that thing. I think that is one key perspective that I have taken with my dealings with the creme de la creme across the globe.
You're in the business of investing. What is the kind of relationship one must have with money? Because money is often looked at in many different ways.
Oh, that is such a sensitive nerve. Yeah. Yeah, I think Karishma, that's a brilliant question. Kudos for you to even, you know, voice that question. What should be our relationship with money? It has taken, I can't talk about others, it has taken me years and years to understand my relationship with money, to be okay with whatever my desire for money was, to remove the preconditioning, the guilt, the poverty mindset, or the insecure mindset, or then, you know, totally rebel and go to the growth mindset. I think it's such an important question that you have asked me, because I hope that if some youngsters are watching this podcast, and you know, if they start on this journey now, you know, to understand what money means to them unabashedly, without any conditioning, without any guilt, shame, fear. What does money mean to you? Does it mean independence? Does it mean freedom of choice? Does it mean luxury? Does it mean a good night's sleep? Once that is out of the way, life becomes so much more simpler and easier. There's not much overthinking that happens. You know your goals, you know what gives you. I mean, we are talking about money because it's the most difficult thing to make peace with. It is the crux of relationships, it's the crux of business, it is unfortunately the crux of lena dena or give and take in the society today.
Yeah.
You know, today it's all about the money. I've heard this several times. I've experienced it several times. So we need to understand, why has this commodity gained so much importance, not only in the society at large, but in our own lives as well. And I think it's very important to de-link your vision or your adaptability to the societal norms and figure out what money means to you personally. So I think it's very important to have that clarity, and it's a brilliant question. I feel a lot more people should ask that and try to answer it for themselves. That what is my relationship with money? What can money give me that will add value to my existence? And then take it from there, of course. For me personally, money was freedom of choice. Money was freedom to live life on my terms, with dignity, with respect. And that was money. My relation with money is limited to that. So if it comes in hordes, I'm happy. If it doesn't come in hordes, I work harder. It doesn't become the be all and end all of my existence. As long as I'm free to live my life on my terms and with my choices. That is what money and financial independence means to me. And I think everybody should answer this question for themselves and then see how it goes from there, you know?
My last question to you is, Mona,
Yeah.
tell me, what have you learned? What is say that you could say one, you could say three, I leave it to you, but what are some of the things that entrepreneurs need to know about communication and about pursuing communications as part of their profession?
I think communication is key. I think that communication, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in a job, or you're just a housewife, or you're in a relationship, I think in every aspect of life, communication is key. Um, I feel that communication, words are all we have. You know, words are all we have. So how are we using those words? How are we making sure that the words are as authentic to what we are feeling inside? Are we justified in expressing something that we haven't resolved within ourselves as yet? Are we justified in having a aggressive argument at work, and blaming it on the entrepreneurial syndrome? Hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm dealing with so many things, so it's okay for me to disrespect you because you've caught me at a bad time. I think these are all paradigms that need to be changed. These are all preconditions that need to go away, all myths that need to be busted. A person who values and respects communication and is thoughtful about communication will win, no matter what sphere he's using that ability in, whether it is at work, whether at home, whether in relationships and friendships. All it takes is to be a thoughtful communicator, to give it a pause, to reflect maybe for a few seconds on the words that are going to come out of your mouth. Are they going to be helpful? Are they kind? Are they motivating? Are they positive? Are they going to make a difference? Or you're just saying it to express some resentment, frustration, hidden anger in your own self. So that distinction is very important. Words are for outside, reflection is for inside. So when you're saying something outside, it should always be adding value to whatever situation and circumstance you're in. And I think it's a lifelong struggle. I mean, these are all idealistic situations, and we all aim to get there, or rather, one should aim to get there. But I think it's a lifelong struggle to be a thoughtful communicator. I mean, you always have to be very, very thoughtful when you're communicating, and keep trying to do that.
Thank you so much, Mona, for joining me yet again. It's really a pleasure, and I'm so happy to have had this conversation. Some really interesting insights, which I'm sure the listeners would learn and grow from. So, thank you once again for joining Karishma Connect.
Not at all, Karishma. And if anybody has any question or any query, make sure that they get a chat with me.
Knock, knock. Are you still here? Well, I'm super happy that you are. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Please do like, share, and subscribe to Karishma Connect across platforms. And I look forward to bringing you many more such amazing stories from around the world. If you've got one, please do get in touch. Lots of love.